come through. All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy New Year to all. I hope you're all in good health. I am Elsie Encarnacion, the chair of the committee. I'm actually going to say that twice because it is part of the script, but I am going to get to the script right now. So welcome to our first, actually, land use meeting of the new year on January 12th, 2022. My name is Elsie Encarnacion and I am the chair of the committee. This meeting is being called to order at 6:35 p.m. Tonight, we are joined by District Manager Angel Muscane, the staff liaison to our committee. In order for us to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. So no one may speak until granted the floor. CB11 members, if you have a question about board business or you wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. If you click on the participants icon, the participants panel should appear. Oh, sorry, my screen just flickered. Should appear, and you should find the raise your hand function there. If you still have technical difficulties, you may click the chat icon and relay your difficulty to the staff. The chat function should not be used for CB11 business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. The chat feature should only be used to alert us of any technical difficulties that you are having or to state in writing information like an email address that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. Please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. Members of the public, if you have a question or a comment about the subjects on the agenda, please raise your hand through Zoom and wait to be recognized. We are now going to call the meeting to order. We will do roll call by attendance. Members, if you're present, please unmute when you hear your name and say present.
Yolanda Brown.
Present.
Jessica Elliott.
Present.
Elsie Encarnacion.
Present.
James Horton.
Present.
Ivy Hume.
Present.
Beverly Pabon.
Present.
Andrew Padilla.
Presente.
Robert Perez. Benny Torres. Jason Villanueva. Candy Vives Vasquez. You have quorum.
Thank you. Okay, just checking if I was muted. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and was posted online. If there's no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. Committee members, only if you object to the adopting of the agenda, may you raise your hand through Zoom now. Seeing no hands, the agenda is adopted. Were the minutes also distributed, Angel?
Yes, they were.
Okay, so the minutes from our last meeting were also distributed to the committee members ahead of time by the board office. If there are no objections, we will adopt the minutes from that meeting. Committee members, if you object to the adopting of the minutes, please raise your hand now through Zoom. Oh, I see Beverly's hand is raised.
I just would like to note that a correction may need to be made regarding the next committee meeting. You have it. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong one. February, not this one. We talking about this meeting. Oh, hold on. I'm so sorry. I'm kind of discombobulated right now. There was an issue with something. I think it was the date of the next meeting. I got so many screens open up, I can't find it right now. I'm so sorry. I think it was something with the date for the next meeting. That must have been last month's meeting. Okay, I know what I did wrong. I'm so sorry. Everything's good.
No problem. Just making sure we're double checking.
Okay.
Okay, so with that, if anyone else, if no one else, should I say, raises their hand and we have no objections, we will adopt the minutes for our meeting, our last meeting. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm also going from screen to screen. This is a new computer and it's not treating me very nicely.
Yes, I'm so sorry. I did find it.
You found it. Okay.
Yes. And the last month's meeting, you had the next meeting for this committee is scheduled for December 8th, 2021. And we
Got
had the meeting on December 9th, 2021.
All right. We will make the adjustments to that.
Okay,
Thank you so much, Beverly.
okay.
Now, before we get into our agenda, I did want to take a moment to really thank the committee for coming together. I was ill last month and was not able to chair this meeting. Andrew Padilla, as always, my vice chair, stepped up, but also just it was a group effort. I believe Jessica wrote the minutes. And so I just wanted to really thank all of you for always having my back and coming together and really making sure that we run a meeting and that we're able to conduct business. And so that's really, really important. I wanted to take a moment to thank you all. And I'm, forever grateful. And I'm much better now. So I'm back. We do have a presentation. Angel, if you would please go to that. Yes. Oh, you actually have an announcement to make.
Excuse me, yes. Quickly, to the Land Use, Landmarks and Planning Committee and the Economic Development and Culture Committee will be holding a joint meeting next week, January 19th at 6:30 for the purpose of hearing presentations by HPD and the development teams for the proposed Timbale Terrace and the Beacon Affordable Housing projects. Those are two of the publicly owned sites identified in the 2017 rezoning for the development of affordable housing, just as a reminder. And then secondly, the next meeting of this committee is scheduled for February 9th. That's all I have.
Perfect. Thank you so much. No informational updates. So we'll move on. Our next presentation, our first presentation, should I say, is an informational presentation regarding the mandatory inclusionary housing application for the National Black Theater Redevelopment Project. The team will come on and present the affordable housing plan. They're here to answer any questions that we may have. There is no action required on this presentation. It is an informational presentation. However, if our committee decides to make comments or write a letter or anything, we will discuss that at the time after the presentation is made. But for right now, we do not have any actions on this item. I do want to just make sure that we are all aware of mandatory inclusionary housing. We will refer to it, I'm sure, throughout the presentation as MIH, just because it's much easier to do than say mandatory inclusionary housing all the time. But for the members of the public, I want to make sure that you understand that that is something that was approved by the City Council back in 2016, I believe, and it really dictates that there be affordable housing that's mandatory in these sort of redevelopment sites, and also that affordability is permanent. And so those are two major important pieces that I want you to hold on to. And then there's a bunch of other stuff that comes in to play when it comes to income bands and affordability, but I'm sure that's part of the presentation, or I'm hoping. But I just wanted to make sure that we were on the same page when we do start discussing MIH. With that, I will pass the mic on to the presenters. Laura, I see you here. And is William also with us?
So we actually have a couple of presenters, although I think I'm just the only panelist. William is not presenting today. His kids are sick. But the National Black Theater is actually going to start first. So I don't know if there's a way to, I can run the Zoom in terms of the presentation, but I don't know if there's a way to, if we have to make them a panelist also. I know Jonathan is
Sure,
on.
just let me know which names I should be switching over, and I'll do that right now.
Okay, Jonathan, are you starting or is Michael starting?
Jonathan's not on, so Michael's starting.
Oh, that's Sade with Jonathan's name on the box. Okay.
Oh, that's weird.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, and then Becca Goldstein is also here, and Crystal Peartree, who's also going to be presenting at some point throughout our presentation. So I don't know if you have to do anything technically to make that happen.
I'm moving over the Jonathan McQuarries. There's a couple. Right.
There's a couple Laura Roggs too. I don't know why, but
yeah, I think I got them all.
Okay, so let me pull up the presentation and then I'll turn it over to Sade. Just make sure this is the right one. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, Sade.
Actually, Michael is starting. Michael,
Oh,
the
Michael.
board chair of National
Hey.
Black Theater.
Everyone see me? I don't know if you can hear me, I'm sure. It looks like you can hear me.
Yes, we see you.
Anyway,
We're
hey,
having issues
I'm
with
Michael
the
Lithcott.
name.
Yeah, hi, sorry for all the confusion. I'm Michael Lithcott from the National Black Theater. We have been working on a redevelopment of our site really since 2000. My mom passed away in 2008. And then in 2012, we partnered with L&M and Goldman Sachs. 2016, we went through a ULURP in 2018 and 19. Now, almost 20 years later, here we are with our development site. We are not just an MIH site, but we are also the first and only so far visual and performing arts bonus on 125th Street. And originally the design was to support both inclusionary housing with a focus on artist housing and providing affordable housing for artists, as well as a brand new theater facility for the National Black Theater, which has a budget of about $43 million, which is the same as the Victoria 5. In the CB11 neighborhood plan that was done in 2018, one of the core things that CB11 talked about was having more and better arts infrastructure in the community that was more engaged and open. This is part of that. New York City has also provided $20 million or more of subsidy for the project. So really is a community first project. We have really been focused on not just the artist housing piece and other pieces. For those of you who don't know, National Black Theater was founded in 1968 by my mom, Dr. Barbara Antier. It's been on the corner for over 50 years. It is one of the oldest arts organizations continuously run by a woman of color. Yeah, many of you have been there. We've done a lot of Community Board 11 meetings there, especially the ones that were more contentious. We're designing a beautiful new facility that really will provide the kind of arts facility that East Harlem needs and deserves. Some of you may have seen this in the New York Times. This is the rendering of the external of the new building. We are going to have 2 outdoor spaces, as you can see on the top, that are loges. There's going to be a restaurant on the lower level. We're looking at different kinds of spaces for the second floor. As you know, in the old building, Harlem Children's Zone was a tenant there. And we're going to look at some other kind of community-friendly use for that space. And the theater is on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th floors, as well as the basement. So we're going to be spanning 4 floors and the 5 floors in the new building. And we're really looking to take the same footprint we have, a little bit bigger, and do what we do better. So we can go to the next one. Great. So we loved our partners at L&M and Goldman Sachs, but we really wanted to partner, and we got introduced to a newer development company that really put artists and art and community in a different way. And so, you know, L&M and Goldman are more broadly associated with inclusionary housing and so forth, especially in Harlem and the Bronx and other communities that we really care about. Ray was a new partner that was really, really arts focused and had a more careful, creative approach in terms of what they were trying to do. And so we partnered with them. So I'd love to have, if Becca's here, come on board and talk a little bit about Ray. So we kept L&M, and then we added a new component that was going to sort of create a new brand for the residential portion of the building.
Thanks so much, Michael. I'm remembering back to our first conversation when I came and sat in the building, and I said that with Ray, we're focusing on building this ecosystem around the future of living, in the branded residential portfolio that focuses on arts and culture, community, and accessible pricing. And you said, did you make that up just now, or did you've actually been thinking the entire time, because it feels so value aligned? And just remembering back, how far we've come since that very initial conversation, and how excited Ray is to be partnering with the National Black Theater, a preeminent cultural institution on a project like this. So the partnership with NBT will be Ray's flagship project. Our first project is currently under construction in Fishtown in Philadelphia, and that has artist studios on the ground floor. And each of our buildings looks to different kind of typologies, like artist studios, or in this case, affordable housing for artists, to understand how art and culture and community can interact with the built environment. So how do we think of space as a resource and housing as a resource, which is why we're so glad to be working with NBT on thinking through what's the next iteration of space as a resource for artists. And, Michael mentioned the BPA bonus, and it's the first time the visual performing arts bonus is being utilized not only on 125th, but the entirety of New York City. So we're really hopeful that this project will serve as a model for what becomes possible, when folks work together with cultural institutions to think about the future of culture and the future of housing together. And we're really excited to be working with L&M. Ray is actually an investor and the brand behind the multifamily part, and we're really excited to be working with L&M as our development partner, because they're extremely values aligned, have been working in this community for a very long time. And with that, I'll hand it off to Laura Rogg.
I just want to have Sade talk a little bit about the programming.
Sure,
and then
of course.
we can hand it off to Ellen.
Hey everyone, my name is not Jonathan McCrory, it's Sade Lithcott. I'm the CEO of the National Black Theater. Really wonderful to be here today with CB11. And I just wanted to add a layer into the cultural kind of footprint of what we are building. The building is new, ground up construction, but our programs are tried and true. And I think a really important layer in this conversation is NBT's commitment to acting local in terms of what the cultural corridor is. We're really, really, really proud to be a part of East Harlem and the beginning of the cultural corridor of East Harlem on 125th Street. I think a signature program, in addition to our main stage productions and classes, has always been a commitment to what Dr. Tier, our founder, ethos was, which is that artists from Harlem should be able to live, work, and serve in their community. And one of our most robust programs, which we are bringing back into a state-of-the-art facility, is our EAP program, our Entrepreneurial Arts program. And I feel like that's probably the program that most people from our community have interacted with NBT, which is our space subsidy program. So we have a half-century commitment to creating not only world-class cultural offerings, but affordable space for artists, for organizations, small businesses, individual artists. Our EAP program is over 50% of our rentals in our space are sliding scale, are really community forward. And so we understood that even though the operating costs will will exceed what NBT has had to kind of invest in the past. We understand that as our community continues to evolve and shape, and there is displacement, we're really looking from the ground up how we incorporate our values of being able to live, work, and continue to live, work, and serve in our community. So this presentation today will kind of focus on MIH, but I also thought it's important to know that baked into that throughout the podium of this building is also affordable space for community and artists. And so I know so many organizations and nonprofits have been incubated in MBT's building, and that's absolutely still the bedrock of how we choose to move forward. All right. On that note, I will pass it on to L&M and to Laura Rugg.
Awesome, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Rugg, and I've been working on this project for a couple of years. I'm the project manager on the development side for L&M. And I'm really looking forward to breaking ground on this one. It's an awesome building, and I will also serve as a development contact through the construction and operations. So, it's really nice to interface with all of you, and I look forward to continuing the dialogue. Just a quick bit about L&M. We founded in 1980s. We've been around for 35 years, and the bread and butter of L&M is affordable housing and mixed income, mixed use developments, of which we've done over 35,000. We started in New York. We have a ton of housing in the neighborhood, and we're branching out to new areas as well, but are very much active in the Harlem communities today. We do development, we also do construction, and then we also do project management. On MBT in particular, we've served as the development partner. We will also be doing the construction, our own in-house team, and we also, our affiliate CNC will serve as the property manager when the building opens. So we're very much involved in this building in all facets. We love to partner with nonprofits. It's sort of our bread and butter thing that we do all the time, and especially in Harlem, just down the street on the National Urban League. We're under construction there. We're building that project as well and serve as the developer there. We've also worked on the Northside Center, Harlem Children's Zone, Acacia Network, and this one's not in Harlem, but was fun to mention because it was relative with the cultural components, the Universal Hip Hop Museum in the Bronx. So just a little bit about the project. As I think most people have already discussed, but we went through a rezoning which completed in December of 2017, which really allowed for the long-term future of the theater and a vibrant mixed-use building on the corner of 5th and 125th. The building to the right is ultimately what is the design building, which is 21 stories. And I'll just go through, I sort of color-coded everything so it's clear people could see. But 21 stories, 260,000 square feet. MBT you'll see is in red, so their main marquee and lobby will be on 5th Avenue. That will be connected on either side to both retail to the south, and then connected internally to a food and beverage user to the north, which is also then connected to this green public entry space, which is listed as residential. It serves as the residential lobby, but it's also actually open to the public. So that is sort of our collision area here in the property where we can have all the uses. Someone going to a show at MBT can also go to the restaurant before and get dinner, or a resident could come and sort of have that collision space on the ground floor. You can't see it here, but on 126, there will also be another sort of residential entrance for someone who's in their pajamas and doesn't want to be in collision with everybody else. The blue you'll see is the commercial space. It's all along 5th Avenue there to the south, and then wraps the whole 125th Street sides. There's about 6,900 square feet of retail on the ground floor, and the whole entire second floor, which is about 17,000 square feet, is commercial space as well. And then at MBT, as I discussed, so 3rd and 4th floors, and they'll also have an office space on the 5th floor, which is on the side on 126th Street. Then floors 5 through 21 is the residential component, where there's 222 apartments in total, which are comprised of studios, 1s, and 2 bedrooms. There's also a robust amenity space, which I'll go through in a little bit, but that's on the 5th floor here, which you'll see is set back from the podium. So we have an opportunity to have some public outdoor space there for the residents. And then there's also some amenity space on the 21st floor, which is connected to a 21st floor roof deck as well, which will have great views, and that's completely open to all residents of the building. Right, this is just a rendering to better illustrate what's happening on the podium. So, that's a 5th floor. Those are all the uses I just walked through. All the way to the left here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but all the way to the left here is the public entry into the residential building, which connects internally to the food and beverage user, which then also connects internally to the National Black Theater lobby. And just to the south of there is all of the retail, which wraps around 125th. You can see 2nd floor commercial, and then the 3rd and 4th floor MBT space. And then this is a view of the corner of Fifth Avenue and 125th. So you can sort of see here how the retail wraps and what the 125th Street facade will look like. You also get a better view here of MBT's awesome outdoor space, their corner loggia here, to sort of flagship moment of the building. Oops. Okay, so just digging into the program a little more, because I know the topic is supposed to be housing here. So this is multifamily residential apartments. There's 222 units, of which are both MIH, mandatory inclusionary housing, as well as the Affordable New York program. It's comprised of studios to 2 bedrooms. Overall, there's 25% affordability under both programs. Because they're measured a little bit differently, there's 58 units total, which are affordable, of which 53 are MIH and 421A, and the remaining 5 units are 421A only because there's a square footage, and they're just measured differently. One's measured on square footage and one's measured on unit count. We are utilizing MIH option 1, which is contemplated in the rezoning, which has an average affordability at or below 60% AMI for all the affordable units. So that puts the makeup at 10% of the buildings at 40% area median income, 10% is at 60% AMI, and then the remaining 5% is at 130% AMI. And I'll go into the bands on the next slide. I just wanted to get into also just detail on the amenity space a little further. There's a gym. We're also having an artist studio here, which sort of ties into the cultural component where sort of maker space artists can come in the building, and as well as any, tenants, et cetera. There's 2 lounges and co-working space, a library. There's some outdoor, lots of outdoor space, both in the back, the front of the building, and the top of the building, all open to all residents in the building. So this is just to illustrate what 40, 60, and 130% means in terms of what rents the tenants will pay and their income limits. It is, you pay up to 30% of your area median income in these particular bands. I want to note too, these are 2021 rates. I don't think the 2022 have been published yet, so I just used the latest I could find. And they do include an electric allowance because the tenants will be paying their own electricity. Just leave it up for a second. Instead of going through each number, let people just take a look. Okay, and then I just wanted to get into a little bit of the timeline. So we started demolition in September and finished fully signed off at the end of December. I was on site today. It's awesome open wide site, ready to go. The construction of the base building we anticipate to start in the next 2 months. We're just waiting for final DOB sign off and approvals. Then it's a 29-month construction schedule. So that would put you at completion around Q2, Q3 of 2024. And then just to note, L&M takes sort of communication during construction really seriously. We are providing, or we'll have an on-site office from day 1 on this project, and extensive notification to community board, to neighbors, on any sort of disruptions, whether it be road closures or disruptive work, et cetera. We're pretty set up to have ongoing dialogue with the community and hope to really have a person there that someone knows to call, et cetera, if there's an issue, to just minimize disruption in the area. Okay, next I'd like to just turn it over to Crystal Peartree, my colleague at L&M, who works for our workforce housing division. She's on. She is going to walk through a little bit of just our local hiring process and MWBE contracting, and then some of the specific strategies and goals that we're working on the MBT project.
Thank you, Laura. Good evening. I hope everyone is doing well. My name is Crystal Peartree. I am the director of our Workforce and Contract and Diversity Department at L&M, where internally we have a team of about 6 that's really the focus is really dedicated to the focus of workforce and contract and diversity on our projects, and ensuring that we develop a strategy for these particular areas of work, and overseeing and ensuring that we're meeting those goals and really developing strategy for each project and communities. Over the years, with that intention of being very intentional in the communities where we build, We've been very successful in creating and filling jobs for over 900 people throughout New York City and New Jersey through our workforce and local hiring commitments. And in the vein of contracting, MWB contracting, local contracting is also a piece that's extremely important to us as we, continue to build and help shape the footprint in New York. And so over the years between 2015 and 2020, we've had a total spend of over $300 million. And that's contracts to trade contractors and suppliers of over 700 contracts within our realm of the work that we've been doing in the city. Next slide, please. Specifically on this project, the strategy for the National Black Theater is really supporting job creation through our local hiring program. Hiring will begin this year and go the span of about 24 months. So between 2022 and 2024 is when a majority of hiring and positions will be taking place. This development, we basically go based on our best practices that have really been tried across our whole portfolio on how to ensure successful placements for local hires in the communities where we build. For this particular project, we're focusing on East Harlem and overall Harlem neighborhoods and residents from this community. As Laura had already mentioned, we've done similar work in projects in and around the community. The National Urban League project, which is on 125th Street. We have a targeted goal of 30 local resident placements with that project. And we've also been successful on both the Lexington Gardens and the Sendero Bebe project with over 30 placements of local residents on those projects as well. For this project, we are aiming for a similar strategy that we've used on the National Urban League project to place 30 new positions, new hires, new local residents on the project. Next slide, please. So part of that strategy is really partnering with local organizations through our workforce referral partner, Build Skills New York. You guys might be aware of them. We work closely with them on a lot of our projects. And so what that process looks like for recruitment and outreach is Building Skills will partner with us to conduct outreach events and utilizing their network to host outreach events, letting the community know what opportunities are available on the project. And they'll be responsible for collectively working with us and our subcontractors to identify opportunities for local residents, getting the word out there and recruiting for those placements, and then also making a connection with subcontractors to place local hires. Typically for each job order or position that comes up, we aim to provide a subcontractor with 2 to 4 resumes of individuals who meet the qualifications of the job to be interviewed and selected and placed in position for a work opportunity. There will also be, the intention is to make sure that community is aware of job opportunities through flyering, outreach, and so forth, so on and so forth. In regards to MWB subcontracting, our best practices is really what drives, this work that we do. Every project, we have a pre-bid conference where we are letting the MWB community and local businesses know what opportunities are available on the project for contracting. This is a new building out of the ground. So, there are a lot of opportunities that can come from construction. And we work closely with a lot of MWB businesses, and we do a lot of work in regards to constantly making sure that we're doing outreach and understanding who the new players are, who are certified and qualified to do work on residential construction, and building our pipeline for diversification in our contracting. We are committed to contracting with M2B businesses. And so part of what we make sure we do for best practices is every bid that we go out on the street for every trade, we are including a minimum of 3 M2Bs in that bid solicitation for opportunities. We are vetting M2B businesses constantly through our pre-vetting survey that we conduct, that really streamlines the opportunity for subs to get in contact with us and understand the requirements of the project and like insurance requirements, things of that nature to work. And on this project, we have already awarded approximately $1 million in soft costs to MWBs. Oftentimes when we're referring to MWB contracting, there's a lot of weight put on construction. Like there are plenty of opportunities in trade contracting, but we don't want to miss there being opportunities for MWB consultants as well, because that's work that happens way before a shovel goes into the ground. So we're proud to say that, we've already had a significant amount of MWB spend on this project on the soft cost side. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. That's all we had today.
Okay.
So thank you all for having us. I don't know if there's any questions.
No, thank you. Yes, I'm sure there are questions. I did want to make 2 announcements. One, I know that you will be presenting at the culture and the jobs piece more in depth at EcoDev tomorrow, I believe. There is a presentation for that. So, I believe strong-heartedly that our team there will hold you accountable for a lot of the things that were said in the presentation today. A lot of it sounds great, but I know that is going to be more of an in-depth conversation about the jobs and culture. My second request is for you to share, if it's possible, to share the presentation with Angel at the board office so that we can post it on our CB11 page and so that our members can also have it for if any other questions come up throughout this process.
Sure.
I also had a question, and you probably did mention this, but I don't know if the camera's picking up all the grades, but I'm kind of old school, so I'm pen and paper kind of note taker. And so I may have missed it, but the timeline in terms of construction, can you just go over that again really quickly so that I can then ask my follow-up question?
Yeah, so right now we are sort of ready to go, other than we're just waiting on final DOB sign off. I know there's been a lot of turnover there with COVID and everything. But yeah, so we anticipate starting in the next 1 to 2 months on the construction. There's about 6 months of foundation work that needs to happen before anything's going vertical. The total construction time frame is about 29 months. So that puts you at, call it middle of 2024 for completion of the project.
Okay. And in the meantime, the occupants of the existing structure will be doing
Yeah.
Go ahead, Shelley.
So MBT is still super active in the community. Our itinerant offices, one, there's COVID, so everyone's kind of has been working from home for the last 2 years. Our intended itinerant office was supposed to be the Victoria space, but that has been delayed for a couple of years. So we've taken the initiative to build out our offices that were currently our executive office space into a co-work space. So we'll be on 137th Street for our itinerant period of time for our in-person staff needs. And in terms of producing, we're producing all over Harlem and all over the city and all over the country. So most recently over the summer, our partnership with New York Phil, we brought free cultural programming to Marcus Garvey Park for the bandwagon. We took over a weekend of Harlem-based cultural offerings in Marcus Garvey Park. And later in the summer, partnering with the Public Theater, we brought MBT and the Public's mobile stage to Uptown Grand Central for 2 weekends, and another site in on 144th Street. So we're kind of everywhere in these while we're itinerant, but still focusing on Harlem. We have an event coming up in next week at the Schomburg, and in a month and a half at the Apollo. So we still have a pretty strong Harlem presence.
So I just want to add that there are no residential tenants in the current building. So
No, I know there's no residential, but I'm
Yeah.
just thinking of people, anyone occupying the space will be relocated, I'm sure, and programming is obviously.
Yeah, so we,
happening Side of the doors.
so we're gonna have amazing space for people that rented from us. I mean, just like same kind of spaces, but way better and upgraded. And yeah, in terms of the commercial tenants, they've already all moved to different locations and are all doing great. Yeah, so we were pretty careful. We took like, you've ever been like almost 3 years notice.
Can I just say real quick, Michael, sorry to interrupt you. We launched something called MBT Beyond Walls during our 50th anniversary for anticipation of this project. And so just to give a sense, we're entering our 54th season. So all of our tenants kind of had a long pathway to securing other spaces. And programmatically, while we were still in the building, we started programming outside of the building just to flex that muscle. And I think really proud to say one of our tenants was an artist named Sanford Biggers, who has grown to international fame as a visual artist, and he will be doing some of the facade design work, an artistic intervention on the facade, kind of connoting that strong kind of artistic visual language that folks have come to know as the National Black Theater Building, with our murals and our new Sacred Yoruba art on the facade. So we'll be reimagining that with the artist Sanford Biggers, along with other local artists, including the Harlem Neal Arts. So everybody's kind of found a home as we continue to produce.
Gotcha. I see that Jessica's hand is up. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question, and this is more about the CNC management. We've had many meetings with L&M and CNC over the years since I've been on the board, but pre-pandemic, I had asked during a presentation about the quality of the management and the experience of residents in apartments. And I previously lived in a CNC managed apartment. And I just was curious, what sort of improvements have been made through CNC over the years, and I guess what kind of assurances can we get that our residents are receiving the quality care that we expect in our community. Thank you. And I just wanted to say also that the building is gorgeous. I'm an architect, and the renderings it's a beautiful building. Can't wait. Thank you.
I'm just wondering, I see my colleague David Dishy is on. I'm wondering if he wants to take this one, not to put you on the spot, David, only because you have sort of a bird's eye view on CNC more so than I do.
Sure. Hi, David Dishy, L&M. I mean, I apologize. I don't know precisely what the prior conversation had been about the concerns. I mean, we have a several hundred person team at CNC. They work incredibly hard. They're dedicated to the well-being of the residents. We like to think they do an amazing job, but at the end of the day, they're managing buildings and they're landlords, and there's issues, and so we try to be incredibly responsive, but obviously not always perfect. So I don't know. I mean, that's a constant dialogue. I like to think that we're ever improving. So I can't, I don't know what that is, but I'm obviously happy to. If there's specific issues or stuff that came up previously, or you think that stuff wasn't addressed, you should definitely follow up, and we're happy to follow up and kind of talk through what that might be and make sure that we're kind of working that. But all I can say is, it's a never-ending, constant effort within L&M, within CNC to sort of be as good as we can be as you know, owners, managers, and make our residents feel comfortable and happy and safe and secure and sort of the dignity of living in our buildings, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, my guess is that's not a satisfying answer to you. I'm not quite sure what the issues might have previously been, but you know, would be happy to hear and talk through that with you.
No, that's helpful. I think it's just important to raise the concern and make sure that, you know, improvements are being made over time. But thank you so much for your response.
All right, no, they're trying. You hurt. I'm going to tell them you said that it's going to hurt their feelings. So like, I got to find out what you know what it was. So thank you. I mean, I appreciate you bringing it up.
Jessica, can I just thank you for the compliment? I think it should go without, sorry, my son, go without saying, can you, Thelonious, our architect is, Frida, our design architect for the base building is Frida Escobedo, who is an incredible architect based out of, apologies, Mexico City. And I think for us, it was really important, again, leaning into our values that, you know, this is, National Black Theater has been a woman-led organization for over half century by a woman of color. And when we were thinking about the crossroads of 125th Street in East and West Harlem, we were thinking about all of our communities, mostly Latinx and African-American. And so we're really proud that this is Frida's first building in New York City. And thanks for the compliment.
Thank you for that. I see, would like to recognize Beverly and then followed by Andrew.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Madam Chair. It is a beautiful building. I've lived in the community just about all my life. I've seen that corner change from having a little supermarket on 126th Street, the cleanest. Then it had a big fire and it had turned into a Kentucky Fried Chicken on the corner. And then that something happened with that. And now, you know, the building you just tore down. So to see this growth of this corner has been really amazing for me living in the community. I want to ask some questions regarding the initial part of the dialogue and questions and not questions, but process of this building. At the beginning of 2017, it was stated that it might be 20 floors with 240 units, and I see that now that you're putting it as 21 floors and 222 units. And I'd like to know why there was a change between those. And my second question is regarding ownership. I know it was a big thing that the National Black Theater be the majority ownership of the property. And I want to know what the breakdown of the ownership of the property will be going forward, since you added a new entity with Ray. And I, you know, just want to know how that works out.
Sure. So I can say that, you know, when the original design was, and I said it at the time, we really had no idea what the apartments were going to look like, how the building was going to be, et cetera. So I'm confident that they put as many apartments as they could in the space, balancing out the need for the theater to be, you know, as big as we could afford to be, and for all this to be worth it for us. So, so that sort of leads to your second question, which is, you know, the theater owns a condo, so it owns 100% of all of its spaces, which, like we said, spans over 5 floors. So the majority of NBT's ownership was converted into 100% ownership of a condo. So we had, you know, part ownership, half ownership with L&M and Goldman Sachs, and now we have 100% ownership. And so, and it's just as a value matter, you can look this up. The NBT facility building itself is, you know, 3 times or 4 times more than the entire building was worth before. So fundamentally, we traded sort of half partnership in one thing with 100% ownership of the theater space. In addition to that, the partnership that owned the commercial building with L&M does have, I think, a 10 or 15% ownership piece, and we're looking to maybe grow that in the overall building. But that's really more for the stability of MBT as an organization. And the reason for doing that was we really wanted to have a first-class space for the community and for ourselves, and one that represented kind of the opulence that we wanted to have going forward. And we just couldn't do that in the space that we had. And so that was the trade-off. It was, own a smaller, not much smaller, but a smaller, 100% of a smaller thing that was much nicer. And so that was a trade-off. And then to do that, we brought in Ray because we wanted to make sure that the theme of the housing component, while we were a much smaller owner of that, was consistent with our artists and artist values, and that we had the opportunity to do some of the artist housing there as well. So that was how that negotiation wound up coming to be. And I think we're really happy with the outcome, because building a building like this is very complicated. The project itself is over $180 million. The theater component is another $40 million in addition to that. And given our resources, that was more than I think we were comfortable doing. So, we're focused really on our, sort of 5 floors, the main floor being the 4th and the 3rd and the 4th floors. And the L&M and the Ray team were focused more on the nuts and bolts of the other parts, but we have the same interior designer. We have much of the same design team, the same architect in Frida. So we marry with them where we can, and we have they're probably more generous with us than they like to be in terms of the decisions that are made. But for the theater, the best thing for us to do was to focus on what would be for anybody a big project, and so that's what we decided to do.
I just want to mention quickly on the floors, because you also asked why did you go from 20 to 21? We ended up carving out some space, and you'll see up in the renderings off the front and the top and the side for outdoor space for residents. So instead of, so we were able to use that floor area and just add, a half additional floor basically, because we had outdoor space instead of floor area on those floors. So that was just a design change.
Okay, so just to confirm, to understand, if you had to put the ownership portion of this whole building, what percentage would be, you're just 100% of floors 1 to 5, and then
we're
someone
100% of our space, which we have a space in the basement. We co-own part of the lobby. We have floors 3 and 4 and an office on floor 5. And then we have, less than, who knows, there's a amount of equity that has to go into it. Let's just say we have between 10 and 20% of the overall project. So we had half of the smaller building, then now we have 100% of our space, and call it 15% of the overall project.
Thank you so much for that, Michael.
Can I just clarify one thing too? Because Beverly brought us back with this Harlem history. Beverly, you're like an archivist. If you know MBT, I think that, it was a decision by the board of MBT that really, we took our history into consideration in that, when our mom purchased the city block back in '86, we, as her children, really were on the front lines of how much stress. I mean, she died of a heart attack. Tunde died of a heart attack. How much stress really managing such a major piece of real estate was, while maintaining what your mission is, which is really being a cultural arts anchor. And so what we found in our tenure, or my mother's tenure when she was still alive, is that if we were hands-on with the property that the art and the culture and community suffered. And if we were hands-on with community arts and culture, it wasn't the standard of excellence that our community deserved. And so that back and forth in terms of what the weight of institution building and ownership has been on our institution is really a visceral kind of lived experience that we knew to create the kind of sustainability that both the National Black Theater and our community deserves, that we needed to be practical about what would be the best and the most sustainable future, ensure a most sustainable future, so that we can be one of the oldest Black institutions in the country as a result of making this kind of business decision with partners that are invested in what our mission and vision is for that corner of 125th Street and has been for the last 50 years.
And I'll just add that, like, the Studio Museum doesn't own their property, the New York City does. Schaumburg doesn't own their property, New York City does. Victoria 5 doesn't own that, the state, New York State does.
Apollo doesn't.
The Apollo doesn't own their land, the New York City does. So we are the only nonprofit that actually owns anything. You know, that was hard to do, not easy to do for 30 or 40 years. And now we have no mortgage, no taxes. We're gonna have a $45 million, you know, so it's a free space for East Harlem, where we get to make our own rules. And we were able to eliminate a lot of the mortgage and other stuff that was holding us back. Plus we have a space that's 3 times, 4 times more valuable. So I feel really confident, and I'm proud to say that I think we made the right trade-offs.
And I want to just say that
I'm sorry, Sade.
Yeah.
We have another presentation after this, so I just want to move to the next.
Oh, great.
Which is from Andrew Padilla, and then we can move along. Andrew?
Hey, thank you all for the presentation. Really appreciate you taking the time. Just 2 quick questions. One, I might not have been able to hear it through my typing. What was the minimum commitment that you made to local hiring? And I have a follow-up after this.
I think Crystal had to hop off, but it's 30 local hires through our subs during construction is the target.
So 30%
New,
local hire.
no, 30 actual positions of new hires from the community.
What does that mean?
Like 30, you know, we need to hire X amount of people on this job. Subcontractors, you know, various subcontractors, we require them to do, you know, depending on the size of the contract, a certain number. So all in all, when you add in however many people that we're going to hire brand new on the construction coming from the community, our target is 30 people. So for instance,
okay, so 30% of the contracting would be local.
No, I'm just talking about like targeted placements, like 30 bodies, 30 people will be hired from the community to work full-time on the construction. It's not a percentage, it's a like actual count.
Okay, so it that could end up being just 30 people at any pay range, and in theory the folks you're contracting with wouldn't necessarily have, you're not committing to that local contractor being you're not committing to that contractor being local, simply that 30 people at any level, regardless of who is the contractor, would be from the community.
Right, that's a spread across various contractors. So, but I mean, contractors usually are coming, you know, they're local, but they come from the general New York area. They're not, you know, it's very specific concrete or whatever. So it's hard to get that actual contractor being local, but we require our contractors to actually hire people from the community to work with under their contract, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would just ask, because that's always a huge thing at the community board. So I just wanted to hear what the actual commitment was. So it's just 30 bodies at any stage of this development. Okay.
Which, by the way, just so you know, is sort of very similar to, even though we have a smaller scale, to, let's say, Lex Gardens or Sendero Verde or National Urban League. It's sort of a similar number, and it's obviously, it's separate from kind of the workforce that might be coming separately with the vendors already. And it's a problem, you know, it's a situation which we bring in, so let's say building skills and say, hey, listen, in addition to what you usually have, we want to ensure that building skills has an opportunity within this neighborhood and these zip codes to sort of place folks on your job. So
Yeah, I was thinking more contractors because that's obviously where the larger money is, right? But I just wanted to hear what the answer was because I just couldn't.
I
hear
also,
from the
Andrew, I
others.
want to add to that, that MBT has a separate fit out that's paid for by the city and hopefully by the state. That's, you know, another, call it 30, 35 million. And we've got a 30% target, which we haven't even really started yet. We're going to try to do it. And that has also prevailing wage. All those jobs are prevailing wage. So, you know, we're also, you know, while they have their own number and we have our own number, you know, we are going to carry more of the weight as it relates to that. You know, the original fight back was on the original board of MBT. So we're proud to have that requirement. And so think about it as a total project. So L&M, because they're building now, we have like a year pause, but our goal is to really stretch there, and we have a prevailing wage requirement, and that helps subsidize the other side of the building. So, you know, this is a balanced approach where MBT can take more of the load, especially around our own local hiring, local commitments. We're excited to do that, and that might help the overall project reach the financial goals that our investors need.
So the other question that I had with regards to this was more so just sustainability of the center. It's of the museum itself. I'm sure you've all seen the Africa Center on 5th and 110th.
Yeah.
And everyone just looks at that as like, wow, this is an example of how not to do something.
Yes.
It was such a big space. And that would have been great had it come to fruition, but right,
Yeah.
it wasn't move-in ready, it wasn't white box,
Oh
no
my God.
org had the money to actually occupy that full time. And so I guess I was just wondering, you know, kind of who's responsible for the build out of the actual theater space financially, and then what does the difference look like in terms of what operating costs were for the theater before, and then projected operating costs going.
Did you coordinate your question with the wonderful with the woman beforehand? Because those things are Beverly and your questions are like definitely connected to each other. So when we first started talking to L&M about this project in 2016, and we went to the borough president, I think we went to Gail, she's a borough at the time, and they were like, look, you know, Michael and Shadi, we love you guys, we want to take you on a tour. Have you been to the Africa Center? Because then the theater was like almost twice the size. What we originally wanted to do was like twice the size of what we wound up doing. And we had all these other goals. And they, you know, and so they took us to the Africa Center, exactly where they took us. And we walked that space, you know, and there's another really interesting space right near BAM that's in a Whole Foods and Apple building where that theater is in a similar situation. And so that advice is exactly why we chose the economic path that we chose, to not try to go over a total of take 6 floors, or, you know, to really put it into some, you know, we had a separate team design the operating expenses. We had a separate project manager go over the costs. We've been working through the build out costs with the city since 2016. And it was L&M and their team that actually brought us in to work with DCLA with real cost estimators and everything else because of the Africa Center example. So, I mean, that's really trying to avoid that situation. First of all, God bless them. We have all the hope in the world for what that's going to become, and they're working hard at it. But that example certainly was a very meaningful for us, and a big reason why, you know, we chose the path, the financial path that we did. And so the good news is that, you know, typically when you start a project like this, like if you look at, say, Harlem Studio Museum of Harlem, they broke ground, moved out of their building. They're still fundraising for that building, right? So we came into a situation where, we were basically fully funded. By the time this building breaks ground, we will be 80–90% funded on the core build out. So we will never have an Africa Center situation because we went into it having all that funding earmarked and made choices to do things less elaborate so that we wouldn't be in a situation where we couldn't afford to build out the actual and deliver what we promised for the actual community. In addition, the way the VPA bonus works, unless the space is finished, L&M doesn't actually get the balance of the space. So all of that was done primarily to avoid an Africa Center situation. And, we had to make some hard trade-offs, but we're very proud of the fact that we have, basically eliminated the possibility of that kind of scenario.
Well, thank you for that response. Appreciate the clarity there. And just, going forward, any more clarity y'all can provide on local hiring on L&M side and everyone's side,
Yeah.
That'll be great,
Well, look, we, like I said, we have a prevailing wage requirement, and we haven't really started our selection yet. And Vinny knows this. We're going to be back with you guys separately and very engaged in that. And because we have that requirement, and quite frankly, the city subsidy to do it, it's not fair to put that on L&M. We have a subsidy from the city to do that. We're going to try to use that money and spend that money locally as much as best we can, because that's what it's for, and it has to be done at a prevailing livable wage. And we're really proud to be able to bring those dollars to East Harlem.
Thank you for that, Michael. I'm gonna just end this with 3 items really quickly. One, just a statement just about the amount of family units that are available here for rental. I know that you said there was like studios and 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. There's a large need for more than that, 2 and 3 bedrooms for our families in East Harlem. So just putting that out there. I understand low-income tax credits and how do you do financing for buildings, and sometimes it's harder to do bigger apartments, but it's just a need for our community, and so I wanted to make sure to make that statement to you all. I also wanted to say that, and just in terms of kind of coming back, I know that we said that there will be constant communication, but in terms of making sure that we kind of like nail something down, for sure. I don't want to go more than a year without hearing kind of about the process and where you guys are at, if there are any changes. So maybe I know that it was projected for 2024, so maybe 2023. We will hear an update, possibly at the beginning of the year, meaning January, next January, for us to kind of revisit some of these things and see if anything has changed or any updates are made. And if we can do it before, then we welcome that on our agenda. And lastly, I know that one of the first questions and one of the first things that was asked was around residential and residents being happy and comfortable in the spaces that they're in, feeling safe and protected, and that they're in good housing conditions. And so, just as a suggestion, maybe there is a way that when we do have the opening and when residents are in, maybe an ongoing dialogue with some of the management in terms of maybe surveying and just kind of hearing back from tenants and residents about the progress there. I mean, everybody loves a new building when they're moving in, so that's great. The first year might be all like happy, but we don't know, so maybe there's a structure that we can start setting up in terms of kind of just following up and holding those things accountable, so that there is something that we can tangibly see from our residents, so that we don't have to kind of guess if what you're implementing is working, or is it touching our tenants and their happiness and where they are. So any of that, I just put that out on the table in terms of making sure that those things are followed up on, and we'll follow up about our next kind of check-in. And again, we encourage any changes or any updates to come through the staff, and so that it could be shared with us as committee members. I see Beverly has one last question, then we're going to move on to our second presentation of the night. But I want to thank you all for your presentation and your time and your energy and your thorough responses.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The chair did ask that you send us a copy of the presentation. I would like to know whether or not, I didn't see on the presentation here, whether or not you had floor plans of the property that you're building, and if it is, can you also provide that, the floor plans of the units and how it's going to be, mapped out? Thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you all again for coming and giving us an update, and we wish you all luck in the process, and we hope to see this beautiful building soon. Next, I guess, yeah, okay, perfect. Just gonna say if we can get the screen back. I can get the agenda up for our next presenter. Jason.
Hey, Madam Chair, I just had not a question, but if we could get a project directory list, like a contact list for some of the people that presented, and particularly the concerns towards local hiring, that'd be outstanding.
Thank you, Jason. Yes, if that could be provided, be great.
Provide that, sure.
Also, yeah, thanks. And also just as a reminder, they will be presented tomorrow at EcoDev specifically in regards to some of the jobs and the hiring practices. Oh. Okay, so I see I've changed screens. I do see that we have an informational update regarding the 2nd Avenue Subway Phase 2 and the acquisition of the HPD-owned property on Park Avenue for the advancement of the project. I see Joe is with us. Thank you, Joe, for being so patient. If you are ready, please let me know. And if you need the screen, also let us know.
Sure, Madam Chair. Thanks so much. Happy New Year, everybody, and thanks for having us. Yeah, I'll share my screen in a moment. For those of you who don't know me, I've been to this committee a couple of times over the last few years, but my name is Joe O'Donnell. I'm the Director of Public Affairs for MTA Construction and Development, formerly MTACC. We are the arm of the MTA that builds all of the capital projects. In our new existence as construction and development, we're now working across all agencies to deliver their projects from a managerial perspective. So, we'll have a lot more interaction with the community board for other projects relative to M&R and Metro North Railroad and things of that nature. But we're here to talk to you tonight about 2nd Avenue Subway. Give you a brief update on where we are with the project, just sort of a check-in as we so often do. And then, as you mentioned, to also talk a little bit about the acquisition of the city-owned properties on Park Avenue between 124 and 125. Just for informational purposes, I have with me here tonight Robert Rickenstein, who is our Director of Transit acquisitions for our transit-oriented development group at MTA C&D. And I also have Ray Wong, who is the program director for MTA C&D, specifically for 2nd Avenue Subway Phase 2. Also in the audience, but not as a presenter. It's not like we have a live audience tonight, so you can't actually see them, are my community outreach team, who are based out of 125th Street, 69 East 125, Alex Zamudio and Jose Carrera. So they'll be following up and taking notes and copious notes on any follow-up that we need to do and questions that you may have. So without any further ado, I will share my screen. Let's see. Can everybody see that?
Yes, we see it now.
Great. Okay, thank you. Again, here to talk to you about 2nd Avenue Subway. I had actually reached out to Angel prior to the holidays, to get in and give you guys an update on where we were with the process, especially relative to the early acquisitions to help advance the project along. It was fortuitous and frankly ironic that we would get the good news that we got a week or so ago from the governor, who shared with everybody, and you may be well aware that the FTA has now authorized the project to move into engineering, which is while largely procedural, it's still a great move because it shows things are moving on behalf of the project. For the last several years under the prior administration, the project was stuck in the bureaucracy there at the FDA and really had not moved forward. So we're excited to move on into engineering. We as a project and Ray and the team have been actively moving this project along from a design and engineering standpoint behind the scenes as we waited for some of these, as I say, procedural moves to happen. And Robert and his team have been actively involved with some of the developers in the community and some of the property owners on advancing the early property acquisitions to keep this project moving. The last time we came to you was April of last year, or of 21, to talk a little bit about some of that early property acquisition. So for everybody on the call, just to make sure there may be some new folks and to level set to make sure that we're all talking about the same thing, speaking the same language. This is 2nd Avenue Subway Phase 2 that we're here to talk to you about. As you can see from this legend or map here, Phase 1 in red, which is the area from 63rd Street to 96th Street and is operational today. That was completed in 2017. And now we are looking to advance Phase 2, which would extend the existing service from 96th Street all the way up to 125th Street with new stations at 106, 116, and 125th Street, where there we will tie into the Lex Line Station 456, as well as the northern, or at least going east and west on 125th Street. The westernmost entrance would be proximate to the Metro North station at Park Avenue. Again, just to give you an aerial view and drill down a little bit deeper into this, the stations that we're talking about building here on 106th Street. You can see the green areas here where there was existing tunnels for longtime residents of East Harlem. You know, this project had gotten going in the 1970s, and if not for a financial crisis where the city had to stop the process because they were running out of money, you know, we could be much further along. Fortuitous for us that we have these segments of tunnel already built, because it is a great starter hole for us. And in the case of 116th Street, it's going to allow us to repurpose those existing tunnels and ultimately be the footprint for the new station. So it's not money wasted. It's, like I say, a great starter hole for us, and it'll help us move the project along. Oops, sorry. Again, just a schematic. You know, I like to inform everybody as to what these, while the stations themselves won't necessarily be cookie cutter, the station footprints will be. You're going to have a station at 106, the station at 116th, and a station at 125th Street. On the north and south extremes of each of those stations, and east and west on 125th Street, there will be ancillary structures. And those ancillary structures are for back of the house, power, emergency egress, and things of that nature. So those are the components that go into making up the station, along with the tunnels, which will obviously carry the trains. When we came to you last time, it was to talk about some of the early acquisitions to advance this project, the first tranche, if you will, of properties that were identified. And we held a public hearing on that, virtual public hearing, because it was over COVID. So the areas in blue are largely the areas where there were properties that were identified, because we know, even before having a contractor on board and really having a quote unquote project where we're doing heavy construction, we know these are going to be the locations of the ancillary and entrance structures. So these are the properties that we're fairly confident that we're going to need moving forward. We do have money from previous capital plans. So, you know, we wanted to start exercising some of those acquisitions and start those dialogues with folks. You know, one of the things that I've been cognizant of, especially in speaking with the public and you all, you know, folks hear the words eminent domain and think that it's the MTA strong arming folks and coming in and putting people out on the curb. And, you know, nothing could be further from the truth. The vast majority of our acquisitions are through negotiated settlements. The eminent domain process is something that we do procedurally to start the clock on those acquisitions, to make sure that everybody is moving this process forward in good faith. and not bogging things down, trying to play, games with the negotiations. So it really is a procedural process that is a legal process that safeguards us and the property owners to make sure that everybody's bargaining in good faith. What we're really, here to talk about tonight, the main focus is the fact that we are going to be advancing acquisition of the former, they're still currently city-owned parcels on between 124th and 125th, the areas that you see here outlined in green. These are blocks 173, lots 72, blocks 1807 to 1809 on Park Avenue, and 1811 to 1813 on Park Avenue. This area hashed out in red is the property that we're talking about today. These are former HPD sites. It's currently vacant land that's presently overgrown with brush. These are very unique circumstances here. These parcels were already identified to be transferred to for transit purposes. So there was a commitment to use these parcels for transit purposes already. The sites aren't suitable for any types of public use before incorporation into the Second Avenue subway project. So, these were identified by the city already as transit use properties or purposes. So part of this discussion and acquisition with the city is to formally transfer these properties to the MTA and serve as a critical location for Second Avenue Subway Phase 2, because this will be the site, the future home of an entrance and an ancillary structure. So as I mentioned before, identification of early needs that we know are going to be critical to the advancement of this project. Where we are in the federal funding process, from a project development standpoint, this project entered the process, which was appropriately termed development, in December of 2016. We went through our NEPA reevaluation, where we took a good hard look at the plans that were originally developed in 2004, and we updated them based on current conditions and the development and the demographics in East Harlem as they present today, not as they were in 2004. We presented those findings to the community and then took comments and feedback from the community. All of that was put in a package to the FTA with the ultimate goal of achieving a FONSI, which is a finding of no significant impact. Essentially what that says is that the MTA has done their due diligence. We've identified possible impacts to the surrounding community, and we've mitigated them where possible. And we received that FONSI in 2018, after which the project was evaluated by the FTA and received a medium-high rating, which is a very high rating as far as a viable project to move forward in February of 2020. Skipping along a little bit, what we just heard at the beginning of January was the good news that we were actually being moved from the development process into the engineering phase of the New Starts program, and that happened on January 6th. What happens now is we need to submit our request for a full funding grant agreement, and that's what FFGA stands for. So we're going through the process now. There's a litany of steps and paperwork, boxes that need to be checked for us to advance into that stage. What that does is it assures us that the money to fund this project is there. Essentially what it says is the FTA is agreeing to fund the portion of the project that won't be provided by local funds, and that we know that that money is coming, so we don't find ourselves in a position like they did in the 1970s and not be able to finish this project once we get it going. So the project team is in coordination with the FTA's consultants right now to help expedite that FFGA once we've now entered into engineering. And then the 20 to 24 capital plan, the 5-year plan that we find ourselves in now, has the remainder of the funding for Second Avenue Subway Phase 2 from a local end of things. From a design progress standpoint, advanced works contract, the design is complete. What that is we know there are certain utilities in the street that we're going to have to deal with. What we've done is, some of you folks have seen activity over the last several years, and even more so recently now that we've come out of COVID pause in and around the project alignment. And that's our geological team, who's there taking, sometimes test pits, which are typically, 5 by 10, 8 by 10 pits, or boring samples to really confirm what we know to be the case. We work very collaboratively with our brothers and sister agencies here in the city, but we're working with 100-year-old drawings that sometimes aren't always kept as meticulously as they should. So what we do is we send our geological teams out there to try to minimize the curveballs that we're going to find. Lesson learned from phase 1 was that a lot of these drawings aren't as accurate as we thought they were. And then once we get in there and open up the ground, we find out that there's a spaghetti mess that we have to deal with there. And, it impacts the schedule, and time equals money, and drags out the process for the surrounding community. The civil, sorry, before I move on, that contract 1, that advanced works contract, we would be looking to get that going at some point this year. Again, we need to make sure that our I's are dotted and T's are crossed as far as this full funding grant agreement goes. But even absent that, at this point, we still could advance that early works project, and we would hope to get that going sometime middle of this year. From a civil and structural design process, this is going to be a design build contract, and that would be for contracts 2 and 3. The contract documents for this design build contract are being updated and incorporated with additional cost containment. Part of this time that we've spent waiting to advance in this process, we've really sharpened our pencils, taken a good hard look at where we can either minimize our footprint, or reduce costs where possible to make this project as palatable as possible to local funding as well as the federal funding side of things. And Robert and his team have continued to work with the developers around 125th Street. Certainly the Durst and Extel folks at both Lexington and Park Avenues. And then, we are also advancing the MEP, which is mechanical and electrical and power systems, and the architectural fit outs, which is a design build contract, and that'd be contract 4. We hope to have those documents completed, or those draft documents were completed in Q1, and the completion of the final documents by June of 2022. I mentioned there's ongoing coordination with the developers at 125th Street and the ongoing geotechnical work that some folks may see in and around the community. And then just from a contract standpoint, this sort of gives folks an idea. As I mentioned, we're fortunate to have some of those, that tunneling done already that serves as a starter hole. But contract 1, which is the advanced utility work, you can see that work is largely going to be along 2nd Avenue. That's this, for lack of a better word, seafoam green, this aquamarine blue. So that's the work that we were talking about that could get going as early as middle of this year. Contract 2, which would be the tunnel boring machine and construction at 125th Street. We would have to build a launch box for that tunnel boring machine where we would actually lower that machine into the ground, and that would be at 120th Street, where the tunnel boring machine would actually go north and then eventually west on 125th Street. The contract 3, which is the real heavy civil construction where things will really get going in earnest on the surface level. That's for the heavy civil construction at 106th Street, for the station shell, the utility restoration, the heavy civil construction at 116th Street, converting that existing station tunnel into a functional station, and the excavation for station entrances and ancillaries. And then finally, contract 4, which is for the station entrance and ancillary buildings themselves. There would be excavation at 106th and 125th Street stations. The station entrances and ancillaries and finishes at 106th, 116th, and 125th Street station. And then ultimately, final street restoration. Everything beyond contract 1 is way off into the future. It would be negligent of me to give you any real sense of time on that just yet. Until we know where we stand in the federal process, contract 1 could get going as early as this year. And we've already been out there. Alex and Jose, who I mentioned are on the phone, have been actively meeting with folks along the 2nd Avenue corridor, both business and residential potential property owners whose buildings are along that corridor and who could be potentially impacted by that work, just to let them know what's coming, doing some preliminary building surveys to make sure that we understand the conditions of those existing buildings in proximity to that work, as well as with the educational facilities like Tito Puente and the Munoz School over in that area too. So we've been meeting with the District 4 folks and the localized principals for those schools to let them know what may be coming in the not so distant future. And then just to reiterate what this project is all about, it's delivering on promises ever since those tunnels were built in the 1970s. They came on the heels of the elimination of the existing L's that previously served this area. 125th Street is a terminus in the heart of a historic Harlem district that connects Lexington Avenue line, the 456, and 125th Street Metro North Station. Over 70% of the residents in this particular community use public transportation to get to work versus 55% over the rest of the city. The East Harlem population growth has grown over 14% since 2010. And what we've seen is it's an increasingly aged population receiving the city's first aging improvement district designation. So what that tells us is, as well as building stations and bringing equity in terms of transportation to this area, we need to make sure that it's accessible for folks of all mobilities. We like to use the term ADA because we're required by ADA designations to make all of these stations accessible, but we also know that it isn't always disabled individuals who necessarily need to use the accessibility elements. It's also the aged population, folks with shopping carts or baggages, moms with strollers, but certainly for the aged population in this community, these new stations, all with ADA elements, accessibility elements, will be a big help. Quickly, from a demographic standpoint, 12% seniors, 20% foreign born, 55% Hispanic, 33% Black, all of which are higher than the city overall averages, and 38% living below the poverty line. So this new transportation option provides an additional lifeline for employment, for medical and health, for cultural, and just opportunities for social activities as well. It improves the service beyond Second Avenue subway. Obviously, it's going to improve reliability because it's a second lifeline. If there should be an issue on the Lex line, this is a second artery in and out of East Harlem. There's going to be a connection to the Metro North Railroad. Right there will be an entrance underneath the viaduct in proximity to Metro North Railroad, so it allows for easier access to the east side of Manhattan for those folks who would be commuting in and out of the city at 125th Street, as well as those folks coming from Westchester and Connecticut, as well as folks coming from the east side and Midtown Manhattan who are traveling up to 125th Street to commute to points north, either for some of the medical campuses that are in the Bronx and further north, and job opportunities and job centers. And then last but not least, just, all of our contact information. I know, that this board has my contact information, and I'm in regular contact with Angel. We also have Jose Carrero, who is a member. Not only he's a resident of this community, so a lot of you already know Jose from his lifelong commitment to, the East Harlem community in various capacities. He's Jose, since COVID, has joined our team. He's taking the place of Hector Santana, who you all had known, who, over COVID, Hector moved on to other things. So Jose, is taking over that role. And Alex Zamudio, who's been a holdover from phase 1 of the project, who really has a lot of the institutional knowledge from a community outreach standpoint and best practice standpoint. He's still here as part of our team. Our whole community outreach team over at 69 East 125th Street is bilingual. We made a point of that so that we know in dealing with the community here, we needed to have folks who not only could understand and communicate in Spanish, but do so, you know, in an effective manner in language, you know, that is, you know, sometimes the first language for a lot of the folks here. So we have that community center. We were on pause for a little while during COVID, but it's back open and operational. And we're back out in the community, and we're looking forward to ramping things back up even more with this advancement into engineering. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for ease of, I see some questions and hands are up.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah,
Joe,
sorry, go ahead.
can we take all the technical questions that came up from this presentation? And at the very end, there's a kind of a specific request we want to make of the community board in terms of what's supposed to happen with this information. So let's go through the questions. If you want to MC this, if you know.
Yeah. So that's what I was going to do. I'm going to take down I'm going to stop sharing for the moment. Because I think, again, we most of us know, or most of you all know what the project is all about, and specific to the HPD acquisition or the city parcel acquisition here. If there are any questions on that, happy to take those. I do see some, as I say, some hands up. Let's see, I'm not sure in what order they were raised, but I see Drew and Jessica have their hand up. So I guess, Beverly and Jason. So there's a few hands up. Do you want me to moderate?
I got it, Joe. Thank you, though.
All right, Angel, you want to moderate?
So we have, in order, we have Andrew Padilla, Jessica Elliott, Beverly Pabon, Vinny Torres, and then Jason Villa. Take it away, Andrew.
Good evening, Joe. Thanks for sticking around, and thanks for the in-depth presentation.
Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you went hard there. I saw
20 minutes
going full steam. Yeah. Got a lot of information in a short amount of time.
I'm not from New York, Andrew, but people say I speak like a New Yorker. I mean, I've been here 30 years now, so maybe I qualify, but
You definitely adapted to the territory. So a couple specific questions. How many commercial and how many residential units are still in the path of the project to be acquired? That's the first. I have a few questions. That's the first one.
Robert, I don't know if you know off the top of your head the numbers. You know, 15 parcels, Andrew, that were advanced as part of the first tranche of that eminent domain proceeding that we initiated. So as we continue to refine, as I said, we're looking to minimize our footprint over this period. So there were 15 parcels, residential and business parcels, that were advanced as part of that first action, you know, and so we're refining what package 2 is going to look like. And along with, you know, I guess I was remiss in stating that, you know, we would probably, and Ray, you can confirm, and probably Robert as well, you know, we'd probably be looking to advance package 2 on the acquisition process sometime this year as well, too, now that we've got some confidence that we're moving along in this process. But I say all that to say on the website, and I can certainly send the link, and I can send the specific section of our environmental documents that lay that all out, Andrew, in terms of the total numbers. I don't have it off the top of my head today, but.
Yeah, well, because I imagine some of that had changed, so I was just looking for the up-to-date number. I did take a look at that, and there are numbers that have floated out in the press, but they even one of the articles that I was thinking of that mentioned quite a bit of the commercial displacement that was occurring. I think this one by Joe Martinez and Rachel Holiday on November 28th. They reference a report, the environmental assessment actually, which I looked at before we started, which was from 2018, right? So right. So those numbers, you know, 170 people and 65 homes, up to 500 workers affected by I mean, that's from 2018. So just if we could have these specific up-to-date numbers on residential and commercial that you believe at this time are still in the path of the project, that is really important information for this community board.
I have a technical question. This is to Ray. I know we put this information just together for the federal government today, but I don't think we can release it publicly until we go to our financial partner first. We can talk generally what's happening. Obviously, from 2018, the world has changed for sure. I'm going to give you an example. On 119th and 2nd, a number of buildings have been taken down. So we'd assume there are residential tenants and commercial gone, meaning they're not our issue. The current owner has taken them down. Of the early package, which is what Joe cited, There's one commercial tenant on 125th Street that's impacted that we know about. And on the 125th Street corridor, early acquisitions, this is the first ones that we're actually been authorized to start. There are maybe 4 or 5 residential tenants, and we think 2 commercial tenants. Easier to see the commercial than the residential. We really actually don't have that visibility just yet, but we're going to be getting there really soon because we've just engaged.
Yeah, Andrew, to Robert's point, and Robert, that's helpful knowledge that we've submitted a new package to the FDA. But so as soon as we get the blessing on that, and obviously, like I say, I'm in constant contact with the group here. We'll make sure that as soon as we're allowed, because everything that we do, because this is a federally funded project, all the way down to our appraisals of property and agreement on a number for these acquisitions has to be approved by the FDA. We can't do anything without their blessing. So as soon as we get that updated package signed off on by the FDA, and we're allowed to share that, I'll be happy to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, those updated numbers would be great because I know there's a lot of concern, but the latest numbers I saw were just so old. I didn't really feel like that was necessarily tangibly useful. And so the other specific question, and I guess it is a general, the other specific question is after having seen the disruption that was kind of caused in phase 1 to homes and businesses below 96, and kind of think about what was learned from that. What is the process that businesses and residents are looking at if they at some point need to recuperate damages, right? That occur inevitably during construction. What's the process for a commercial tenant or residential tenant? Or small property owner in the neighborhood that suffers some sort of damage as a result of the build out of phase 2.
Yeah, so 2 things. I mean, first and foremost, they would work through our community outreach team, and that would either be you can come directly, or they could come directly to myself, Alex, Jose, or whatever the makeup of the outreach team is once we get this going and we're in physical construction and there's the potential for impacts. And then we have 2 kinds of impacts, right? We have physical or, damage, if you will. And then there's the, either the monetary or the perceived impacts, whether it be through noise. Sometimes we hear from businesses that there's some sort of financial hardship or loss. So a couple of things that we've learned from phase 1 is we've already, and part of that, cost containment exercise and the mitigations of impacts around the surrounding community is to try to minimize our footprints. Quite frankly, some of the property acquisition that we're advancing on this project is because we're trying to minimize our presence on the street. So we're acquiring properties early that we know that we can use, that we're eventually going to use as an ancillary structure or an entrance structure, that we can put our equipment in, or use as a staging area. So we're trying to move things off, minimize the level of impacts on the street as it is already. But then secondarily, if there should be an issue where there's an awning impacted, or there is a building who's got a facade that they say there's a crack in it and they think it's related to our construction, that physical element of damage, that's part of the process that the community outreach team is going through right now with the project team and working along that corridor where that early works is going to be. So they're doing pre-construction surveys and inspections with buildings to find out what the conditions of these buildings are, sort of set the criteria and level set where those buildings are now, so we know what their condition is before we get into anything. And if it's determined that there's an issue there, then yeah, we have an OSIP, we're owner insured. So there's a whole process where we would submit the paperwork, employ an independent third-party investigator to go out and try to make those folks whole, do what we need to make those folks whole. It's a little trickier from a business standpoint. One of the things that we learned from phase 1 is that when we have a work zone up in front of a building that has a commercial tenant on the ground floor, and there's a line of sight issue, what we've tried to do is work with those buildings on the fence wraps and the screens that go around the buildings. We'll work with them to create decorative and distinctive fence wraps so that folks know they're open for business. Part of our Good Neighbor initiative that we had developed as part of the phase 1 community outreach, we had these wayfinding signs at the beginning and end of any construction that stated, that what's going on here, or, open for business, and listed almost like a mall sort of floor plan would, all of the businesses that are on that block. gets a little trickier because the MTA does not have a financial mechanism to compensate folks for a loss of business. So if somebody came to us and said, listen, proceeds are down 5% because of your construction, there isn't any real way for us to quantify that, and there isn't a financial vehicle. There are some vehicles on the city and the state level. There's some small business type stuff that, we'll work with the businesses to put them in contact with the right folks, and they could try to recoup that. What we found in doing that sort of activity in the past is that, we really need to work with the city and the state to ensure that these folks, these business owners, are really walk through that process and understand how they can do that stuff. It's not an MTA vehicle, but, we're happy to point them in the right direction.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's actually, you went right into my last question, which was what was the process for lost business? Because that was, for people who didn't suffer physical damage on the ground floor, certainly the construction, caused a lot less foot traffic to businesses that were on second. And I know at that point, there was really no manner for them to recuperate those losses. So I was just wondering if that had been changed in this phase 2, or if you were looking to change that in phase 2 now that there's new funding allocated.
Yeah, no, that's a legislative policy that we don't have the authority to change, unfortunately. Although we have authority in our name, it's not on a legislative level, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Jessica?
Thanks, Angel. I just want to say it's a great presentation, and you really made it fun, so thank you. And I understand that these sorts of long-term planning exercises occur over many decades. So I'm just curious about the connection of the line to the Metro North station, and if that's future-proofed in any way, or potentially burying the Metro North in the future, or if there are any future plans for that connection.
So, maybe Ray might know more, or Ray, jump in if you think I'm speaking out of school here, but our ancillary and entrance facility that's going to go where we're talking about tonight, the parcel that we're looking to advance acquisition of tonight, or transfer, if you will, that's outside of Metro North's right of way. That's to the east on between 124 and 125th Street. So there will be a connection to the staircase there, but we're not, it's an elevated structure. So the good thing is the Metro North Railroad is going to continue to be an elevated structure. The Park Avenue Viaduct project, which is another project that's coming, the rehabilitation project, is going to look to shore that up for another 100 years. So that's not going anywhere. So that our anticipation is that, we're pretty safe where we are, and it's with that long range planning in mind that we're going to be in close proximity to their entry points of Metro North for foreseeable future.
That's correct, Joe. Yeah, it's just like an entrance right across the street from the Metro North there.
Joe, next question is from Beverly Pavone.
Hey, Beverly.
Hi, Joe. Oh, whoo! You just went through that. I was so amazed of everything that you said and how fast you said it, and it point. Okay. While looking at the presentation, I hope we get a copy of that also.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll send that to Angel.
Thank you. You mentioned that the Metro North rehab viaduct area is going to be impacted, or y'all working together, because I know that's coming up in East Harlem. I'm also concerned about some questions regarding where the train ends at, where the stations, where if you're going to have a place for storage of trains, and because we just had another presentation just before you regarding the National Black Theater, and that's going on 5th Avenue, 125th Street. So I want to know how that would impact it. Also.
Yeah, so along with the station proper, the footprint of the station will go from just probably a little bit east of Lexington Avenue to just west of Park Avenue as far as the station goes. But then the tunnel boring machine isn't going to stop there. It's going to continue west to at 300 feet or so past the 2-3 at 125th Street. And that was the commercial parcel that Robert mentioned as part of that first acquisition package. And that's where the tunnel boring machine will come out of the ground. And then ultimately that location will also be an ancillary structure for us, an air intake and exhaust facility. So there will be what you're referring to, is tail tracks where we will store trains for use so that they get up and running first thing in the morning when service starts. So we're not waiting for trains to come all the way out of a yard somewhere. There will be some trains housed there at 125th Street, as well as if in the event of a train that's got an issue and we need to take it out of service, we can store it up there till we can get to fix it or to move it back to the yard. So that those tail tracks, I think, are what you're referring to. There will be, there won't be very much at all of a street presence related to that. There will be that ancillary structure at the farther most western point of those tail tracks, but nothing that will be so far below the ground as we pass the National Black Theater that there won't be any impacts there.
Okay, and my last question is the time frame for this portion of the stage 2, or what's the time frame like this for this?
So if all things, if we were to be able to push go today, and we got our full funding grant agreement from the federal government, and we knew that we were going to be going from when construction starts. Ray, again, it's about what is it, 72 to 81 months of construction?
Yeah, it's up to 8 years, right?
Yeah.
That's what we've been, that's what the governor said.
So, right. So I hesitate, Beverly, to give you an end date because we don't have a start date yet. So from when we put shovels in the ground, it's approximately an 8 to 9 year process before we're running trains.
Up to.
Yeah.
Could be sooner.
Yeah, well, that's part of the beauty of the design build process. And that's one of the reasons why, so these two heavy construction contracts are earmarked to be design build. One of the things that the design build process does is it inspires or elicits innovation from the contractors because they are incentivized to deliver the project as quickly and safely as possible, right? So, things that they've learned on other jobs and in other places around the world to be able to deliver this project more effectively and quickly while still doing it safely, they're incentivized to do that. So, Ray makes a great point that, the longest that we are anticipating is 8 to 9 years. Hopefully it's sooner, and hopefully we get a lot of innovative processes from this design build process.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Great presentation.
Thank you, Beverly. Thanks for having us.
Next two are Vinny Torres, followed by Andrew Padilla.
Thank you, Andrew. And Joe, thank you for all the wealth of information that you've been providing this evening. It certainly has been comprehensive. I'm hoping that you can share some more information about what we've asked you in the past related to workforce participation for minorities on the project related to phase 1 back in.
Vinny, you were the first person that I thought of when I heard about President Biden's new Infrastructure Investment Act. And if you're not familiar, one of the things that you and I had talked about so many times over the years, right, was the fact that historically under the Trump administration, we were hamstrung with regard to geographically restricting our contractors' hiring practices. As a federally funded project, we were not allowed to geographically restrict our contractor and tell him you have to hire from a specific location. That was part of the federal process. But there's a new pilot program under the Biden administration that not only removes that restriction, but it incentivizes us to work with our contractors to hire from within. So we're actively working not only with the contracting community and the Building Construction Trades Council of Greater New York, but we're excited about the fact that that restriction has been removed. So I don't have fast numbers for you now, but what I can say to you definitively is we are working with the federal government to advance along in that pilot so that we have better participation from within the communities that we're delivering these projects. So
yeah, that's great, Joe, and thank you for that information. And please allow me to get my questions asked so that we could see if we can get some additional information. Right? Yep. Unfortunately, some of that of what you just described, however, it may sound good and great. It usually leads just to a best faith efforts, nonetheless. And we've already seen in this community what best faith efforts relate to and equate to. Going back to your presentation, speaking about people, close to 40% in this community living under the poverty line, not to mention those that are close to the poverty line, and many of which are just living above the poverty line, which might be the remaining 60% or so. Really like to know, on this, if you're providing, do you have some of those numbers? And again, I'll ask you, Joe, do we know on phase one, the total percent of workers that worked on the project? Of that, do we know the percentage of minorities that went to work on the project? The percentages of women that went to work to the project, and the percentage of MBE contracts that were awarded and the contract dollar amount associated with that. I really would like to see if that's, we've gotten so much in-depth information. I don't understand why that's information is something that can't be compiled by this public agency, right? Who's here to serve the community. And, we really want to see if we can put an effort together on this project that moves away from business as usual, right? Something that can go outside of the protocol here, Joe, because we know too often that these projects do not yield true benefits when it comes to workforce participation for minorities and people in our community. It just doesn't happen. Contractors utilized by your agency on Second Avenue subways have been deplorable to the beat where recent times, many of them have been charged over dozens of millions of dollars in fines for minority participation and minority contracting fraud. And this is happening all under you guys' watch. And if there's not an aggressive effort to really change that, then we're going to just get the usual business as usual. Great talk, great sounds, great sound bites, but no results. So I really would like to challenge you, Joe, to really see if we can put something together here that can really yield tremendous and true benefit to the community and to people. 40% under the poverty line and many others close to it and just slightly above it. This project can yield tremendous job opportunities for so many in need. How is it that you guys tend to do that? Is there a plan? You have a plan for everything here with this elaborate presentation, but where is that plan?
So from a DB and MWB participation standpoint, this project and federally funded projects, Vinny, are governed by DBE laws and requirements, and state funded projects are overseen and guided by MWB. The last time I came to the Economic Development Committee, middle of last year, I came with our head of the Department of Diversity and Civil Rights, Michael Garner, who presented and spoke in great detail about the advancements that the MTA has made in that regard. As a matter of fact, at the beginning of this year, about a week or 10 days ago, the governor honored the MTA for being the single highest employer of minority and women-owned businesses in the state of New York. Out of all the city agencies, we gave out over $900 million worth of MWB contracts, which was by far and away the next closest competitor. If it was a contest, was like in the $300 million range. So, multiple times fold. So, it's revisionist history to talk about some of, and I'm not even talking in specifics because I'm not exactly sure, the fraud that you are referring to, but I'm sure it's happened over the course of time. But this isn't the same MTA. And, I know we've done some research and we've talked about this before about the phase one numbers. There was an issue with the requirements then as far as, compiling numbers. But let me go back and take a look. I know I've sent some stuff to Angel on this in the past. Let me go back and take a look at those responses and see what the hang up was there. We certainly know the average number of participants on any given day, any given month in the project as a total. I just don't know that they were parsed out in the beginning because there weren't these guidelines, established for women, for minorities, et cetera, back when these projects began a decade or two ago. So, but let me go back and take a look at that. I give you my word that I'm gonna go back and take a look at that, and then we're gonna work with CB11 and this community, to do better, to employ from within the community as we advance these and all of our projects. It's a fact that we are making that effort.
I appreciate that response, Joe, and please don't take this personally, but we still got no numbers, and we still got That's the short version.
I never take it, I never take it personally, Vinny, and I appreciate your challenge to me, and I hope to step up to it, and we'll continue to have this dialogue. It's never anything personal. It's you want to get to the bottom of it, and I want to get to the bottom of it for you.
Thank you.
I think that's it, hands wise. I think Andrew put his hand down. Andrew, can you take the mic? LC is away. Another right.
Absolutely. Is everything's good?
Yep. Should be back in a few minutes.
All right. So are there any other thoughts from, well, we have attendees. We haven't asked our attendees how they feel. Is it appropriate to see if there's any comments or questions from the attendees?
Certainly.
Yeah. So you don't have to, respond, but we appreciate you being here. I definitely want to make sure we hear your thoughts if you have any. I see Eva Chan's hand is up. Eva?
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
The question is about why the DIRS organization is suing the MTA, and what is causing the delay. That corner has really deteriorated, and it's quite dangerous right now to go to.
Well, short of the pat answer that we can't comment on ongoing litigation with regard to that, I don't know, Robert, if there's any high level identification of those conversations. Again, it was portrayed in the media as this active litigation, but it was more a protective action on their part. But Robert, I don't know if you care to comment.
I would just simply say they claim delay, and we respectfully disagree. It's one of those, okay, and it will be played out. But essentially, just realize it's a condemnation action that is being initiated. So
is there anything the community board can help?
Well, yeah, Robert.
Yes,
I mean, honestly, there is with regard to Durst organization, probably not. I mean, there's active ongoing dialogue with them. It's it's like a brother and sister thing where we smile in front of our parents and we fight when the door is closed. So, but short of that, with regard to the community board, one of the the reasons we're here today is to talk about that city acquisition of parcels. So next steps for this particular process would be for the community board, to make their recommendation, or if you have any questions or concerns about that, we would need you all, whether it's, to your full board, make your recommendation, and then the full board notifies the city that you were apprised of this acquisition. But that is a step in this process that we would need the community board to take.
Essentially, you are making a recommendation to city council after this. Thumbs up, thumbs down, comments. It's up to you to indicate what you think about us acquiring this property so that we can incorporate it into the 125th Street station.
Thank you for that. I see one hand here, Jason. Oh, wait. It went away.
Hand up too.
Jason, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. My question to MTA is, what's their intention with like community givebacks? Is there anything allocated or planned for to, boost the economy or, revitalize some of the areas? I don't know if that was as a matter of fact, that wasn't a part of the presentation, but it's being asked, right? We're asking about NWB, we're asking about local hiring. We want to think about training. You yourself profess that our district is financially disenfranchised in deplorable ways. A city agency such as yourself, $1 billion program, what are you planning on doing for East Harlem?
Right. So obviously, aside from the transportation equity and providing a second lifeline, to the city and to the residents of East Harlem, as far as getting around and getting to centers of employment and mental health centers, cultural and educational centers, there's obviously, wherever we work, we're going to put the area back better than the way we received it. So that's a tangible benefit. We typically work with the DOT our city agency partners, when we put the street elements back, we'll work with them to work within their guidelines. It'd be, again, negligent of me to speculate as to what that's going to look like, 6, 7, 8, 9 years from now, whenever we get this project going and finally completed. But yeah, we certainly work with our city partners to make sure that we put the area back together, that it's improved upon from the way we received it. Secondarily, one of the things that we make a concerted effort to do, and this is a little bit in Robert's court, but when we have these ancillary structures, the 125th Street is a vibrant commercial corridor. It's a very busy and bustling area. So the last thing that we want to do is put an ancillary structure up somewhere and have it be a dead corner in an otherwise lively area. So we're going to look at those ancillary structures and possibly incorporation of, commercial space into the ground floors and things of that nature. And then there's always the discussion and looking for opportunities for transit-oriented development throughout the project alignment. So the short answer is we're always looking at those things. We don't have a definitive, we don't have a concrete answer for you, to use an unfortunate construction pun right now, because we don't have the project that far along. It's not, it's still in the infancy. We are looking at all of those things.
But we're investing how many billions? What's the number, Ray? I mean, that's the amazing thing. We've gotten the federal government to be our partner. We're not there yet. This is going to be one of the largest investments in the entire country. This is extraordinary. I mean, I don't want to, we keep, kind of dancing around. That's the big investment, I would think, in East Harlem.
Thank you for that. I have 2 more hands up with Beverly and Andrew.
Again, great presentation, but I want to follow up regarding I want to follow up regarding the properties on 124th Street, 125th Street and Park Avenue, and what kind of structure would be there. I'm glad that Joe said that they would think about putting commercial there, on that corner, because it's kind of bleak right now, and it's been like that for a while. So I want to know whether or not even possibility for even housing above it. I don't know how your ancillary, how you pronounce that word again?
Ancillary, yeah.
Ancillary,
yeah.
Units work, whether you could have residential or anything over it, or commercial. But that would be great if, other than that purpose that you're using it for, that is using it for something else for within the community to use. And housing, or if it's possible, will be a great addition to that, to liven that area up, plus bring more people to have an opportunity to use the services that the MTA is putting there.
Yeah, certainly. And Beverly, the parcels that we're talking about today are mid-block. It's not on that corner. The corner there was a single room occupancy, I believe, that back in the day. That's also down.
Right.
Parcels that we're talking about today are actually mid-block and closer to the 124th Street side. And it's going to be a mixed use ancillary and entrance facility. So there's already going to be a use on the ground floor. It'll remain to be seen what's left, again, as we advance design and get the contractor on board. At some point, the design builder will really take a good hard look at the maximization of that footprint and what other uses that it may provide. And as we go in this process, some of the things that Robert's put in his head around is those joint development opportunities, where some of it could, end up being housing. We don't know. We just don't know at this point. But it, the cooperation and the cooperative efforts between ourselves and some joint developer, as yet to be named at this point, as we investigate these things. But yeah, definitely things that we're looking.
Thank you.
Plus maximizing retail. We agree 100% with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beverly. Andrew?
Yeah, I don't want to be nitpicky here, but I just kind of wanted to push back against the notion, and this has been a great presentation, but I just want to push back against the notion that the billions in the subway are the benefit in themselves for East Harlem, especially in the context of the questions surrounding local hiring, especially in the context of the displacement that's being caused, the depreciation of property values as construction is happening right in the lane of construction, and then the speculation that'll be seen during and after the project is over in a community that's mostly renter. So I just wanted to make sure that we were conscious of that. But otherwise, this has been a thorough presentation, And if we could just have those specifics on where residential and commercial tenants are, how many are left in the path of this project, that would be really helpful.
Absolutely, Andrew. Thank you.
Xavier?
All right, good evening.
Evening.
Thank you very much for being here and presenting. It was a very complex presentation. This has been an ongoing process that actually predates many of us, including my own father, who was born in 1950. So dating a bit back when we had our elevated. We had previously our EIS, and I would say by the time we actually get back into breaking ground, so to speak, and I know we had a recent little presser event, a lot of community members are concerned that that EIS is antiquated at this point, especially given COVID. And if you look at many of the construction delays that have happened throughout the city, public works projects, even right down to my sector, which is film production and television, we're all having to reassess the impact. And that has a full-on impact on the community at large, whether that be parking, housing, displacement, various issues. So I'd like to know, what is the holistic plan that's going to be brought forth? Because I feel like this presentation, yes, was very focused on particular issues, but there have been a lot of community members as of the past 2 quarters that presented a lot of concerns with the project ongoing, and they felt like they've not been addressed. Some items have, which we have dealt with directly, but like I said, we're several years out, but how can we actually work together and mitigating those issues before us, which have been presented on multiple occasions. But I think now with COVID and others and inflation even more playing a part, how are we going to handle that and work together?
Yeah, it's a great question, Xavier, and it's a valid point as far as, how things have changed. One thing that I would say, though, is we did a supplemental environmental assessment, which was part of that 2018 exercise that took a good hard look at all the assumptions that were made in 2004 and compared them to what the realities on the street were today, how East Harlem has developed, what the demographics were like, what the population, was like from it. As I mentioned, it's now a largely aged population. So how it has changed from 2004, how we needed to change our construction practices and how we were going to deliver this project and how we were going to actively mitigate against any of the, the complications that were going to arise as a result of that construction. So I think it's frankly, it's a bit more recent, but one thing that I would like to do, and Ray, you may have more information on it, but I would like to go back to our design team and find out if there is a shelf life on that EIS or on the environmental analysis. And, is there a deadline where we would have to go back and take a new look at that. So let me get back to you on that one. I got to double check. But certainly I know it's been more recent than the 2004. It was 2018 that we redid that entire document. But let me check on it and see if there's a shelf life on it.
Regardless of the shelf life, is that that was done in 2018.
Yep.
Okay, we're in a different world. There's 7% inflation. CPI is definitely impacted. That's heavily affecting all sectors. We've seen how that's impacted not just Main Street, but Wall Street, which also dovetails with public works projects such as this. And then you take into consideration not just the aging population of our community, but our community also has a decreased ridership, due in partly to COVID, but also to that many are part of a reverse commute lifestyle. And that's something that needs to be taken into consideration as well. But I think it'd be helpful because as we undertake this process, everything under the sun should be considered, whether you have people that are going to lose parking spots, and we have had an influx and investment of more people buying cars. Not that I'm a big proponent of that. I'm actually a very big fan of the MTA and riding my subway and my bus and train. My son loves the train. He's obsessed. I'm sorry, I have too many Thomas the Train sets around the apartment. My feet hurt from stepping on them. But again, I'm asking this because I'd like everyone, because as the community board, we have to be out there on the front lines. And as you mentioned earlier, when we deal with the council, the state, feds, we have to be on the voice. And this is some of the feedback we're getting. So again, that's why I'm asking, is that with the EIS, again, a long-term construction project as this, which we would like to, I think, see in some sense. Many people have been supportive in the past. I just want to make sure that we're taking in totality the impact on the community. So you've heard a lot of great notes here, but again, that's what I would ask, and not just don't consider the shelf like, oh, is it time to do it again? Because that tells us it's a benchmark, it's a check mark to get it off the plate versus what are we doing that's best to actually complete this project in a healthy way, in a way that will benefit the community at large and also meet our obligations at the agency.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Xavier. I want to thank you, Joe, and everyone who presented and answered questions. The presentation was thorough. You've heard that, but I will say it again. And there was, you know, a lot of great questions from our committee that most were answered, and some will need follow-up, and we'll be looking for that follow-up. I did want to mention, and I apologize for having to step away for a moment. I know we are talking about this big investment, and we're focusing on the monies and the Second Avenue line, but we do now have a line for the next 8 years. We have a Lexington Avenue line that is suffering still, and is still, you know, in disrepair in many of our stations, which we will have to live with for 8 years at least, right? Or at most. And then when those 8 years are up, you know, it's kind of like this pretty shiny thing. We're going over there. What is the commitment to that Lexington line in terms of the MTA? And I know you may not have the exact answer now, but is there thoughts about that? Because I know that that's something that we're having to deal with in the meantime.
Oh, in the past, I would have thought I was fortunate, as I used to tell my colleagues over at New York City Transit, that I didn't have to deal with the 24-hour, 24/7 operating system, right? New York City Transit handled the operating services. We built the new shiny stuff. So, you know, but now with the new capital construction switching to, you know, transformation to construction and development, as I say, we're managing a lot of those existing infrastructure, existing system projects. So I'll go back to my team and find out what the plans are, if there are any plans for upgrades from my stations group and my infrastructure group for Lex in the near future, for the Lex line, and especially at 125th Street. And I can certainly circle back with, you know, what they're considering.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great to, you know, for the next presentation, and I know that there'll be many over the 8 years, that we just get an idea of what is going on, you know, with what we have currently, because we are living it and using it, and when I don't want that to go untalked about. Andrew's hand went right back up. Andrew.
Oh, no, just to note to that, I mean, in terms of conditions, the wheelchair accessibility, right? That all those stations are not wheelchair accessible. They're not in compliance with the ADA. So.
Thank you for that, Andrew. Yes. So any of those points, would love to hear back from, but thank you so much. I appreciate your time and your effort and your energy and the information you've given us. We look forward to more presentations from you, updates, and, you know, good luck in completing it in less than 8.
Thank
we
you.
encourage that, and we encourage also that you keep all of our community members in mind as you go through the process.
Absolutely. And as you know, we've said all the time, this is just the beginning of the dialogue between all of us. You know, we're here. So, you know how to reach me.
Oh, we will. Especially
Thank you, everybody.
Vinny's looking for those numbers, so I mean, I would work on
No,
that.
I know. Vinny and I have this conversation.
That and community investment.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
Yes.
you, Jason. Okay, well, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
No problem.
Have a great night. Stay safe.
You as well.
Yep. I know.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Angel, for putting that back up. So, you know, this is a piece of our agenda that we have committed to keeping on the agenda, looking at focusing. I'm sorry, I just saw something pop up. Local hire, yes. Thank you for that, Eva. I will add that to our feedback to the MTA. Apologies for not seeing your hand. No problem. So yeah, so this, you know, our goals, our accomplishment, looking back at what we have already kind of voted on, already spoken about, and also what we're looking to focus on moving forward. So more focus on landmarks, obviously our cross-committee collaboration. As you know, we've already announced that we have our joint meeting with EcoDev, I believe on the 19th of January coming up. We are looking for more of those conversations, especially, and I did want to make this point, conversations around more affordable housing, those percentages when we talk about MIH, all of those things that we are looking at developers and asking developers and pushing those things. Those conversations should be happening between committee members and between committees like us and the housing committee way before a presentation comes up. Like a presentation's coming up, the developers already had a plan and they're going to adhere to a MIH, or they're going to adhere to whatever rubric they believe that we are approving of. And so if we do want to take a look at those kind of numbers and challenge them and change them, times change and those numbers should. So we should talk about that committee collaboration, especially with the housing committee, as it is one of the ones that come up the most, but also with EcoDev. And so, I'm not going to go into everything here. We had a long night. We had some really great presentations, but I wanted to keep this up here. If anyone on the committee has questions or has a comment about any one of our goals and any ideas, I encourage that those are spoken about here, but also that we start, communicating outside of these meetings and really brainstorming on some ways to get these goals accomplished this year. I want to see some real action and some things coming out of these goals so that we can put them over onto the accomplishment side. And then we're going to be revisiting some of these the land use applications that we need to review. Angel, yes.
Thanks, Elsie. Just to clarify, these were the goals for last year that you identified at this time last year. And then on the right, what you accomplished in the last year. Your goals for this coming year are for you all to determine either tonight or tomorrow or in the coming months. But I wanted to add this slide to show you that, you identified, quite a number of things and you were able to accomplish a few of them, a number of them, right? So it's good to take the time to see like on the community engagement bit and the education bit and the learning bit right at the bottom there, how we hosted the fair share criteria presentation, how we had a report on an assessment of the rent stabilization in East Harlem. That those are to that point, I think, in my opinion. And we also reviewed, land use applications, a number of them, and LPC applications. And then the ongoing conversation about local hiring, which is eternal, but necessary. Just important to, I think, for the committee to take stock of that it does accomplish things and it does do the things that it sets out to do. Not everything is done, but that's why you keep meeting.
Right. Yes, thank you. I am extremely tired, but also do remember that conversation that we had about this slide now. So that is true. So we will now, actually, I'll actually that offline, but that is a good point in terms of taking a look at it. I don't expect anything less. I mean, I can see even from our conversation during this meeting that this committee is committed to really pushing a lot of these issues forward and making sure and holding accountable a lot of our presenters who come forward and think that we may have forgotten some of the things that we talked about. There's something on my screen here. Yes, okay. So with that being said, we will be setting new goals for the upcoming year as a committee, start brainstorming, looking at these goals, looking at what we've accomplished, and start setting out those goals for the next meeting. Like I said before, I would love to have some of that happen off of the meeting, we will discuss them at the meeting, but just so that we can get the ball rolling and we could come to the table with some stuff that we can really work on and then have the majority of the meat and potatoes talked about at the meeting. But I think that we can do that with some email exchanges and maybe some phone calls. And so with that being said, I think, what was the next? Old business? Any old business, Angel, that you can think of, or any of the committee members? Nope. Next slide. I think that's all, right? New business. we just discussed our new business, which is our goals, and we'll have that up on our new business for next month. And then our roll call. Xavier, yes.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to wish you all a happy new year. Thank you. This has been a very productive meeting. Please be safe as we go through, because we're having a lot of breakthrough infections. But I want to say this meeting was an example of what it just makes me very proud and invigorated to be doing the work. So I want to tell you all, thank you so much. But again, when I say be safe, I mean that in earnest, because I'm currently on quarantine right now because my little one got exposed. So please, having recently lost my mother-in-law to COVID and a few other friends, I just want to ask you all to, take all the precautions you can. And I look forward to seeing you all at full board. And for those at executive committee, as we move forward with our agenda for this year and the subsequent year. And thank you for being stuck in and being out there in the community and doing the good work. Stay safe.
Thank you, Xavier, and I wish you much health. I know the feeling, so please be healthy, and I wish you health for you and your family. Beverly?
Yes, I just want to know regarding the open meeting laws, has that been addressed, or are we going to still be able to do this after January 15th? Has it been extended? Does anybody know anything about that?
I can.
Yes.
So I don't know what the final resolution has been. I do know that a bill passed the Assembly. I'm not sure what the status is at the Senate. Admittedly, I did not check. But the current plan is for us to continue going remote until we're told otherwise. The borough president is supportive of continuing it this way. And I think in light of the Omicron over the last couple of months and every office shutting down or seemingly shutting down, I think it makes sense. So hopefully they're sensible at the legislature and will allow us to continue.
Oh, great. Looking forward to that. With everything that's happening,
it's true.
It's crazy. It's really crazy. I too lost people in quarantine back and forth. So yeah, I was worried about this deadline of January 15th. And like, oh my God, please let them have the sense to continue this. Please. Okay, thanks a lot, guys. Great presentation, great meeting, a lot of information. I think Community Board 11 is awesome.
Oh, Beverly, you're a part of that, by the way. You're a part of making it awesome. So thank you. So without further ado, we will have Angel do our final roll call and then we'll adjourn the meeting.
Yolanda Brown.
Present.
Jessica Elliott.
Present.
Elsie Encarnacion.
Present.
James Horton.
Present.
Ivy Hume.
Present.
Beverly Pabon.
Present.
Andrew Padilla.
Present.
Robert Perez. Benny Torres.
Present.
Welcome back, Vincent. Jason Villanueva.
Present.
And Candy Vasquez. You have quorum.
Thank you. Thank you all. Good night. Stay safe, stay healthy. And I'll see you all virtually soon, hopefully for the 19th.